Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to IVS 2022 warm-up, the online technical conference preparing to IVS 4th edition. First of all, let me thank you all for coming here today. Let me introduce myself. I'm Virginia, one of VALVEcampus organizer. The topic of today's presentation is API 20 series Upstream Supply Chain Management. The last minute of presentation will be the question and answer part. Please write your question in the chat box. It's now my pleasure to present Massimiliano Gamba, Oil and Gas Industrial Professional API Q1 Q2 Lead Auditor, Raster API Subcommittee. Thank you so much and have a good presentation.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Massimiliano Gamba. I'm from MP International Consultancy. Here, the content of my presentation. Supply chain definition and concept, API CSOEM and CS20, API 20 specification, common requirement between API specification, question and answer. Let's talk about supply chain. Starting from some supply chain definition taken randomly out from the web that I would like to share with you. Definition from Oxford Languages. The sequence of processes involved in the production and distribution of commodity. Definition from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. In commerce, a supply chain is a system of organizations, people, activities, information, and resources involved in supplying a product or service to a customer. Supply chain activity involve the transformation of natural resources, raw material, and component into finished product that is delivered to the customer. In sophisticated supply chain system, used product may be re-enter the supply chain and at any point where residual value is recyclable. Supply chain link value chains. Definition from Investopedia. A supply chain is a network between a company and its supplier to produce and distribute a specific product to the final buyer. The network includes different activities, people, entities, information, and resources. The supply chain is also represent the step it takes to get a product or service from its original state to the customer. You will understand how wide is the scope of the supply chain. Of course, you have already heard of supply chain before. Everyone talk about it. But if you stop for a moment and try to make yourself definition of supply chain, in your own words, of course, even after you having heard this definition, maybe you will realize that when we talk about supply chain, we need to circumscribe the scope in order to make the concept behind this definition. Let's try to play around words in order to finalize the generic definition of supply chain. If by game you combine the word supply chain and upstream, you discover that we can attribute a different meaning depending on how we intend to address the scope of the application. Supply chain upstream common meaning. The upstream refers to material inputs needed to production, while downstream is the opposite end where products get produced and distributed. Upstream supply chain in oil and gas industry. The upstream part is a part of value stream together with midstream and downstream and including exploration, searching crude oil and natural gas fields, underground and underwater, fields development and construction, oil and gas production, drilling, extraction and recovery. Effective supply chain in the oil and gas have main drivers, and this is represented by awareness of stakeholder, recommendation for supplier to be compliant, requirement for supply and manufacturers to be fully compliant, and some benefit as well, coming from the supply chain that could include mitigate the risk of failure of products, increase the overall level of material, products, and processes relevant to oil and gas industry, boost profitability, reduce the company overall costs. Now we will speak about the API CS OEM and SC20. The base for a concrete and sustainable development is represented by the activity of standardization of oil and gas industry that are the best practice. Then allow me to introduce you the American Petroleum Institute, CSOEM, and the Subcommittee 20. API CSOEM is a part of Upstream standard committees. It is the Committee of Standardization of Oilfield Equipment and Material and supervises works of subcommittees. Each subcommittee works with a specific area of exploration and production of oilfield equipment. What does Subcommittee 20 do? API SC20 developed and maintains standards on supply chain management for critical material, products, and processes used in oil and gas, natural gas exploration and production. API SC20 is in charge to develop the supply chain management. Okay. API SC20 is upstream supply chain management, and its scope is drive development of upstream oil and gas industry supply chain. Its focus is in the implementation and harmonization specification relevant to material, products, and processes deemed critical to safety and reliability of product used in the oil and gas industry, supporting the global supply chain, allowing suppliers, manufacturers, and the end user assess the common licensing and or registrations. Objectives. The objectives of API SC20 is to institutionalize the best practice for supply review and qualification, harmonize material, products, and processes, quality level and qualification requirement, of course, establish scalable requirements to address various levels of criticality and risks. Okay, here you can see represented the wheel of virtuous development cycle of the supply chain led by the subcommittee SC20. It makes the standardization of material, products, and processes into the best practice in order to harmonize it on the written specification. Keep the cycle active by updating the specifications of material, products, and processes, following the best practice that change and evolve, harmonizing them into new edition, errata, and addenda of existing specification. Here we have the voting members that are parts of API SC20. We have operators and users, OEM and manufacturers, and general users and consultants. Applying SC20 specifications is a voluntary compliance or certification, contractual requirement, product specification recommendation, and product specification requirement. Here we have a sample of user operator specification requirement. Here is Aramco sample of specification 04 SAM 055 that is related to material system specification for valve and chokes API specification 6A that you can see here. The casting practice should be qualified at level CSL3 foundry qualification requirement in API 20E. This is a sample how this API 20 specification enter into the operators and user specification. Here we are a sample of specification recommendation. API 6A specification for wellhead and 3 equipment in actual revision in 21st edition. You can see here hot working practice. Note API 20B and 20C provide a guidance on hot work ratios. And related to the procedure of NDE procedure shall be supported with a documented qualification record as required by the specified normative referenced standard, such as API 20D. Here again, a recommendation in API 6D specification for pipeline and piping valves. You can see here on the Annex E, casting may be specified by the purchaser per API 20E at level CSL1, CSL2, CSL3, and CSL4. Open die forging may be specified by the purchaser per API 20B, FSL1, FSL2, FSL3, FSL4. Closed die forging may be specified by the purchaser as per API 20C, according to FSL1, FSL2, FSL3, as FSL4, and carbon and alloy steel bolting may be specified by the purchaser as a per API 20E at level BSL1, BSL2, or BSL3. Here again is a sample, in this case, of mandatory requirement when API 20 it become mandatory into API specification. It's API 6A. You can see here, closure bolting shall be qualified and manufactured in accordance with API 20E and 20F. Bolting specification level, BSL shall be according to specified table 15. Here you can see the words change, not as a recommendation or maybe, but shall be. Okay. Closure bolting records, if BSL2 or BSL3 specified per table 15, closure bolting record should be maintained in accordance with the record requirement for API 20E and 20F as applicable. Closure bolting marking, once again, closure bolting shall be marked in accordance to API 20E and 20F. Closure bolting records, if a BSL2 or BSL3 is specified per table 15, closure bolting record that are required by API 20E and 20F to be submitted to the purchaser shall be maintained. Here we are other sample where API asks for mandatory requirement of 20 series. Once again, API 6A specification for wellhead and 3 equipment 21st edition, where repair of casting shall conform to the requirement of API 20A CSL3, where repair shall be documented in accordance to API 20E. Test method and acceptance criteria for PSL1 and PSL2 visual examination of casting shall be performed in accordance with the procedure specified in API 20E. Production casting shall meet the requirement of API 20E and this specification. The API 20A CSL shall be in accordance to the table 19. Regarding the casting practice shall be qualified to casting specification level CSL2 foundry qualification requirement in API 20E as a minimum. For PSL 2 and 3, the casting practice shall be qualified to CSL 3 foundry qualification requirement in API 20A. Another sample where the API 20 specification become mandatory is API 6D SS related to specification for subsea pipeline valves. Pressure boundary bolding shall conform to the requirement of API 20E and 20F in accordance with NSH. Alloy steel bolting shall meet the requirements specified by API 20E in accordance with the bolting specification level 2, PSL 2 minimum. CRA bolting shall meet the requirement specified by API 20F in accordance with the bolting specification level 2. Here, as a general overview, a status of published API 20 specs. We have API specification 20A as a carbon steel, alloy steel, stainless steel, and nickel alloy casting used in petroleum natural gas industry. Second edition, Addendum 1 and Addendum 2. Specification API 20B, open die shaped forging for use in the petroleum and natural gas industry in the second edition. Specification 20C, closed die forging used in the petroleum and natural gas industry is in third edition. Specification 20D, qualification of non-destructive examination services for equipment used in the petroleum and gas industry, second edition. Specification API 20E, alloy and carbon steel bolting for use in petroleum and gas and natural gas industry, second edition, Addendum 1 and Addendum 2. Specification API 20F, corrosion resistant bolting for use in the petroleum and natural gas industry, second edition, includes Errata 1. Specification API 20G, wellness services for equipment used in petroleum and natural gas industry, first edition. Specification API 20H, heat treatment services, batch type for equipment used in petroleum and natural gas industry, second edition. API specification 20J, qualification of distributor of metallic material for use in the petroleum and natural gas industry, first edition, Addendum 1. Specification API 20L, qualification of polymeric seals manufacturers for use in petroleum and natural gas industry, first edition. API specification 20M, qualification for supplier of machining services for use in the petroleum and natural gas industry, first edition. Specification API 20N, heat treatment service continuous line for equipment used in petroleum and natural gas industry, first edition. And this is a general overview of the actual API published standard already available. Here we have some under development API 20 specification. As you can see here, specification API 20P is plating and coating. Specification API 20R, subsurface electronics, and specification API 20S, additive manufacturing. That specifications are not yet published. It's under development. Okay, these are among all published and pending publishing specification. Only some of them are included in the API license program. Only for this specification, the manufacturers may apply the API license for monogram application. And that are API specification 20E for casting, 20B for die-shaped forging, specification 20C closed die forging, 20E alloy and carbon steel bolting, specification 20F corrosion resistant bolting. For this specification, API have in place a monogram program. That means facility are able to apply to get API monogram to put on their products. This is an overview in a table. In this summary scheme, you can see an overview of specification status. In blue color are the specifications object of the API license program. In white color, those not included in the API license program. And in green color, those still in development. Here you can have a general view of the API licenses related to the supply chain. The information that are here is public information and can be consulted directly in the web by anyone on the API composite list that is accessible by the website. Here you can see API 20 for bolting is the most diffused, and API 20A is a casting, the less diffused. These data are updated on April 2021. Here is a geographical distribution of active API licenses. China is the country with the most API active licenses. China is the country with the highest number of active licenses and only one with at least one active license for each specification you can see here. Probably Chinese company understand better that other the opportunity behind of this license and development. Also here data are updated on April 2021 as get directly by API composite list. Here we are, all specification are based on specification level. You can see here is a main requirement of comparison between API specification license. We have API 20A, B, C, D, E, and F. Here are the only one, as I told you before, that are allowed to apply for an API license. The common point is that every one of these specifications asks for qualification and have a specification level. For the casting, we have specification level expressed by CSL from 1 to 4. For forging, specification level relevant to API 20B and 20C. We have also 4 levels from FSL1, forging specification level 1 to forging specification 4, both for API 20B and 20C. For API 20E, we have a bolting specification level, BSL. Here we have 3 levels, BSL1 to BSL3, and API 20F. We have 2 levels of bolting specification, so BSL2 and BSL3. For each standard, we have qualification ranges. For API 20E, the qualification ranges is based on the casting weight from 1 to above 4,538 kilogram in 4 different classes for each material groups from A to E. Related to forging, we have also distinction between weight class and material groups. Here we are for API 20B 3 classes of weight and 5 material groups from carbon steel to nickel-based alloy, and for 20C, again for forging specification level, we have weight ranges in 4 different classes in this standard, and for each material group we have 4 material group in this specification, from carbon and low alloy steel to duplex stainless steel. And API 20A, we have 3 different BSL and 9 bolting type. You can see here in the table the 9 bolting type that are related to bolting material grades that are covered in this specification. You can see here on the table. API 20F, we have 2 different BSL and 9 bolting types with 3 different material grades. For every one of these specification, manufacturing process specification is a requirement, and for some of them you need to make a sample. It's the case of API 20A with 20A with the sample casting is required. It's not required for API 20B and 20C, and is required for API 20E and 20F, the sample to get the qualification. Other difference is represented by the qualification of procurement source for material, for starting material that are not required by API 20E and is required for 20B, C, E, and F also. Regarding the QMS, you can see here in the column the QMS is required for foundry. For foundry, you need to implement all the time QMS conforming to API specification Q1 or ISO 9001, and the same for API 20C, 20E, and 20F. We have a special requirement also for minimum facility requirement that needs for API 20E, 20B, and 20C. Regarding to API 20E and 20F, there is no specific minimum facility requirement, but in any case is applicable a minimum requirement for manufacturer required by API Advisory 11 as a minimum facility requirement for a manufacturer. Question and answer.
Massimiliano, what are the opportunities for the companies that would like to implement API 20 specification that are not included into the API monogram program?
This is a reply for the first question. Companies that meet the requirement will get a competitive advantage in the market, making more easy the control of supplier and supply chain for their customer. Companies that are interested in specification not covered by the API license program, of course, may implement a quality management system according to API Q1 requirements, as well as conforming against the specification they wish to satisfy, and apply for an API Q1 registration. Holding an API Q1 registration allowed the inclusion into the API composite list that is a public register that gives a great visibility in the oil and gas market. Achieve the API Q1 registration allows simplified procedure for selection, qualification, and evaluation within the supply chain.
Massimiliano, your next question is, what's the future of supply chain API specification?
In the next future, the selection and qualification of supplier, as well as the supplies itself, will be more and more addressed to companies that will be able to ensure compliance with the requirements of the supply chain specifications. Requests for compliance with the API 20 specification will be less recommended, and increasingly will be included into other API product specification and customer specification as well. API 20 specification will become the recognized references for products and processes of interest of the main suppliers in the oil and gas industry.
Thank you, Massimiliano, for your good presentation. The time is over.
Let me thank you so much, VALVEcampus, for this opportunity to share my knowledge on API supply chain. Thank you so much for your attention. Goodbye.
I wish you all a very nice day. Bye bye.